Hello, I'm Chuck Wolfe, Chief Executive for Charles J. Wolfe Associates, LLC. As a motivational speaker and a leadership consultant and executive coach and trainer, I often work with very successful people in their companies. Since many can't afford a professional, I volunteer to host a radio talk show called The Emotion Roadmap, Take the Wheel and Control How You Feel, on a nonprofit community radio station in Bridgeport, Connecticut, WPKN. My reason for doing the show is to share with as many people as possible this wonderful process for helping people manage their own emotions and their relationships with others. My goal is for everyone listening to learn to use the Emotion Roadmap to make life better. As you listen to me, help others, I hope you are also learning. As a Simsbury resident, I'm delighted to be able to make the show available through Simsbury TV. To learn more, go to my website, www.emotionroadmap.com. Thank you for listening and watching. And this is Chuck Wolfe, and you're listening to the Emotion Roadmap, Take the Wheel and Control How You Feel. It's good to be back. I hope you enjoyed the presentation last week, the interview that I did with Helen Rice, who is a good friend and a very empathetic, caring professional at Mass General Hospital, who is also on the faculty at Harvard Medical School. Helen is a psychiatrist, and she discovered in her work that empathy has actual impact on patient outcomes in healthcare. Not just in psychiatry, obviously, but in any kind of work where people are involved with helping people to heal. And when people are empathic and caring and show empathic concern for others, it actually makes a difference in outcomes. It also actually lowers the number of medical liability lawsuits, malpractice suits. So there's an incentive that way too for people to learn more about being empathic. But I think the most important idea behind the ability to teach people how to be empathic is this concept that you can actually help people to learn how to demonstrate that they're caring. Sometimes people care quite a bit about other people, but they don't know how to show it. And that might be someone like yourself. Or it may be someone that you care for deeply and would wish that they could be more empathic towards you, and yet they may actually really care about you. But sometimes there's some skills associated with being empathic that not everybody learns. And one of the books that Helen has written is called The Empathy Effect. And if you want to learn more about how to become more empathetic in terms of demonstrating your caring concern for others, it's something that you can pick up and buy. It's just been released last week, and I was very excited to have Helen on the show talking about it. So I hope you got to hear that. If you didn't, it's available on prx.org. It's on publicradioexchange.org if you want to go there and look up the Emotion Roadmap. So today's show, and if those of you who are tuning in who are new listeners, I'll tell you a bit about the show. And those of you that are regular listeners, thank you so much for listening again today. Again, if you're a regular listener, you know the show's a lot about call-ins, about people calling in and getting some help with this concept of what I call an emotion roadmap. Now, the Emotion Roadmap is conceived as a strategy for helping people deal with their emotions, being more in emotional control of your own feelings and being able to influence the feelings of others. Now, most people right away can think of instances where it's important for them to be more emotionally in control. Other people struggle a bit with that. So let me just mention a few opportunities for you to consider. One is, let's say you're a professional in the workplace and you're struggling with a peer, somebody that you work alongside who is challenging for you to get along with. And you've already tried a few things to improve the relationship, and it's still highly dysfunctional, at least in your own mind, perhaps in theirs as well. Well, the Emotion Roadmap is an attempt to look at the aspect of that relationship that has to do with how you are feeling and how you believe the other person, he or she, might be feeling. And to think about if the feelings that each of you are having are not helpful, what would be ideal to have? One instance I just had, which was a recent phone call and somebody I was working with, had to do with a parent-teacher conference And so possibly there's an emotional situation at home where the teacher, with a very young child, preschool child, talked to the parent in a way that was detrimental, in the sense that the teacher didn't start with all the nice things about the child. She just jumped right into, here's where your child is falling down. Boom, 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 boom. And nothing really positive. And when the parent asked about, why aren't we just hearing about this now? She said, well, she actually had told the other parent about it. And according to the other parent, wasn't true. So if your child is being attacked in a sense, maybe this is all legitimate and the child is difficult, but if you feel as though your child is being attacked, that's another highly emotional situation, isn't it? So, the idea of emotional control is to understand the power behind the emotions that you feel. Emotions are designed as an evolutionary system to help us to cope, to thrive, to survive. And where they evolved from had to do a lot with just trying to run from wild animals that might be trying to eat us, or some other tribe that's trying to kill our tribe. So, it evolved from things that happened many years ago, and we don't always have the same outlet for, the early flight or fight response relative to stress was related to emotions that, were designed to help us to either fight with something that was attacking us, to run from something that we couldn't beat that was potentially going to devour us. But today's world, we're more in situations where we have to at least seem to be civilized, appear to be civilized, and yet we feel some of those same angry responses when someone may attack us personally, or attack our child, or do something that annoys us in the workplace, or maybe you've got someone that works for you as a leader in the workplace, and you're struggling with how to get the value from them. You're struggling with the idea that, that somebody has the potential to be really good at what they've been hired for, and yet their attitude is a problem, and it's causing you to wonder, can I even keep them? I don't want to lose them because it's tough to hire somebody with their skill set, but their attitude is so challenging, it just feels like I don't necessarily know how to keep this person, and it's more frustrating than it is helpful. So maybe I'm better off just letting them go and trying to find somebody else, even though that's also a painful process and a challenging process. So how do you turn that around? How do you get the person's attitude to change? So there's lots of opportunities where in our world, in our circumstances, in our homes, in our professional workspace, in our day-to-day work life, in our community, in our perhaps churches, synagogues, mosques, whatever, that we have relationships that aren't working the way we want them to work. And when they're particularly challenging and you're stuck and you're unsure how to proceed, that's where this whole concept of an emotion roadmap kicks in. The idea from me, what I learned a number of years ago now, is that there's emotional intelligence abilities that each of us has. Now, for many of you, especially new listeners, that's a whole new concept. What do you mean emotional intelligence abilities? So that's a whole nother show if I wanted to go take a deep dive into that. But let me just say this about it. Some people are really good at identifying how they're feeling and how others are feeling. Some people think they're really good at identifying how they're feeling and others are feeling, and they're not. But they think they are. And others are quite clear that they're not very good at this. That's an ability, the ability to identify how you're feeling and how others might be feeling. The other real ability around emotional intelligence is this concept of using emotions. And this one's really fascinating, which is this concept that certain emotions drive certain kinds of thinking that facilitate certain behaviors. So for instance, if you've got to look at a spreadsheet and do an analysis to see if there are any mistakes in some data that you want to present to some group that's important to you, a senior team perhaps, or maybe you're a contractor and you want to make a presentation to a potential customer, and you've got to make sure there are no mistakes in this, what mood or what emotion or what feeling is best suited for that? And maybe I'll just leave that hang for a bit, and if you're interested, you can call in and try and guess what that is. It's kind of an interesting question, right? What feeling is best suited for looking over a spreadsheet to make sure that there are no errors before you get to present it to whatever group that it'll be presented to? What feeling would be best for that particular task? So, but what I want to say is not so much to answer that question. What I want to point out is that there are feelings that are better suited for particular tasks than other feelings. And so once I understood that as a real ability, I began to think that if there are certain feelings that are best suited for a particular task, and I have a task that I want to do, something that's important to me to achieve, whether it's a spreadsheet or something else, what feeling would be best? I asked myself that question. That's part of the emotion roadmap. It's so, what feeling would be best? What would be ideal? And then I look at how I am feeling. And if what I'm feeling is not what's ideal, then it's the understanding part of the ability of emotional intelligence, which is, how do I change from what I am feeling to what's ideal? How do I do that? And that's what I help people with. When you call in, if you've got a situation, as for instance, as some of the things that I mentioned earlier, you might have, or things that just something that's going on for you that you're really uncertain about how to deal with. For regular listeners, you know what this is about. For new people listening to the show, this is a show where you get to call in. I have some expertise. This emotion roadmap, this is my creation. This radio show is my creation 10 years ago. I've been doing this for 10 years now. And the intent is to be able to teach people how to use this concept of an emotion roadmap in their own lives. So hopefully regular listeners are beginning to get good at, comfortable with, just really have as a tool in their back pocket, something they can reach for when they're stuck. Because what I've had the experience in my professional life as well as my personal life is that when smart people are stuck, it's almost always because something emotional is happening inside of them. Or they're worried about the emotional response they might get should they approach somebody about some issue that's going on between them. And so this show is called The Emotion Roadmap. Take the wheel and control how you feel. That's what the show is about. And the Emotion Roadmap is about thinking about how you are feeling. And if it's not helpful for what you're trying to get done, what would be ideal to feel? And if what you've discovered in thinking about this is that the ideal feelings are different than the feelings you're having, how do you change? How do you change to the more ideal feelings? And the last part of this roadmap is about managing emotions. And again, there are skills here. Sometimes we assume that people that don't manage emotions, it's all about attitude. And sometimes it is. Some people just don't care how they react to others, don't care if they get angry in front of others, don't care if they insult others. But sometimes the person that looks like they don't care, it's not that they don't care, it's that they're unaware of the impact of their words on others. Now, I know that's a stretch for some of you, but I have found this to be true, that sometimes what we think of as an attitudinal problem is sometimes an ability problem. I've actually written about this. I have an article that I wrote for a journal, a human resource journal published in the United Kingdom that was about what I'm calling emotional disabilities. In other words, it's just like with learning disabilities, if you don't have the ability to recognize the impact of your words or your statements or your position on things and how it's impacting others, if you're really unaware, that's a disability in terms of making relationships successful. Now, sometimes you can change that. You can learn certain things that will help you to be better. Other times you need compensating strategies that that can't change and you can't be better at perceiving how another person is feeling effectively and accurately, then maybe you need some workarounds, and that's what the show is about. The show is about helping you to find ways to reach solutions, to at least to have a plan where sometimes people call in, they're feeling hopeless, and then by the end of the phone call, the typical scenario is that they're feeling hopeful. So that's what this show is about. So let me now give you the phone number in case you want to call in, because that's why I'm here. And then you're calling in and sharing an instance, a challenge that you face. If I can help you by demonstrating how the emotion roadmap works, everybody learns. That's why I'm doing the show. All of us programmers at WPKN, we're all doing this as volunteers because we love what we do. In my case, what I do is I love helping people. So if you want to call in and I can help you, I'm not just helping you, is my hope and expectation. My goal is to help everybody who listens to understand how this concept of an emotion roadmap works. And by demonstrating it with callers, I think everybody gains. So let me give you the number a few times and see if anybody wants to call in. And by the way, I'm on the air on Wednesdays. The first and second Wednesdays of the month from 12 to 1. So I have about 45 minutes for the rest of the show to talk with you. A little less than 45 minutes. The number is 203-336-9756. 203-336-9756. And I'll wait a minute for you. If I don't get calls right away, I always come on with a topic that I'd like to address, and I'll bring that topic up in a moment. But calls are fun for me and for the audience, and so and not just that they're fun, but they're helpful to the people that call, at least typically. Not that I can help everybody, but track record's pretty good in helping people. So 203-336-9756. So if you're thinking about calling, pick the phone up. Don't wait. This is a chance to get some help in an area that people don't know a lot about in terms of thinking about the emotional aspects of challenging situations and how by focusing on emotions, you can come up with opportunities or options or plans that just don't seem possible without this kind of focus and attention on the emotions that are underlying what's going on. So again, give me a call if you're thinking about something. Don't wait. 203-336-9756, and I'll give you a minute of the call. One more time, 203-336-9756. Okay, so at the moment there are no callers, but I hope if you got somebody. Okay. Hi, this is Chuck. You're on the air. Who's calling, please? Hello?
Hi there.
Hi. I guess you might have your radio on. Could you turn it down so we could talk?
Sure there. So I'm going through a problem at the moment where I'm basically facing, I need to sell everything I own, very possibly, and move.
Okay.
And I really, really don't want to because the emotional attachments that I have to things.
Okay, so there's not a lot of context there, but and by the way, you don't have to give me your real name if you don't want to, but just the name that I can address you as?
Al.
Al? Okay. So Al, the only thing I got from you is that you've got to let go of a lot of stuff, and you don't want to do that because you're attached to a number of things, and yet you don't seem to have any choice. Is that right?
As it would appear.
So you do have choices?
Think so?
Well, can you tell me a little more? It's a little hard to know how to help you without having a little more context.
My father passed away last year, and essentially he left me with an estate that is near hoarding levels.
Okay. And some of these things you're also attached to. These were things your dad was attached to, but you feel some attachment somehow to your dad in this? Any of these things?
I feel that's usually the way how it goes with people.
Well, it doesn't matter how usual it is. It's just really, the emotional things are really kind of unique to the individual. So to help you, it's kind of important to understand how you're feeling. So is this like everything that he has, just a few things that you feel like you want to keep, or you feel like giving any of this up is like somehow betraying your dad in some way?
I go back and forth between I want to keep all of it, and then I just want all of it to just go away.
Okay, well, they describe that as ambivalence, right? So you're feeling somewhat. There are moments where you feel like you want to keep everything, and then moments where you don't want any of it around because it's painful to have it around somehow. Sound right?
Somewhat. It's almost like I don't quite have the means to keep it. Sometimes in order to have a lot of things, you need to have a lot of space.
Sure, sure. Are you anything like your dad in the sense that you like to collect things too?
I don't know if it's liking to collect. It's more obtaining them to learn and then move on.
So you have some behaviors that look a little similar, but you don't know that it's collecting. You just like to get things to learn from and then move on. But do you keep those things around even after you've learned from them?
Makes a lot of sense why some people get tattoos.
I'm not sure I understand that, but did you keep the things around yourself?
Not necessarily.
Okay, so you have some interest in collecting, not collecting things, but bringing things in and learning from them, and sometimes you might keep them or might not, which is pretty normal, right? It's not the same as hoarding. Hoarding is an unusual behavior that's problematic because people can't seem to let go of everything that they seem to bring in, and they get so attached to everything. It's like they give away a piece of themselves when they let go of it. That sound about right to you?
So how do you decide which things are pieces of you?
Well, in some way, you can make a decision that none of them are pieces of you. But there are there are things about them that somehow make you feel more whole. And so it's not. I'm not trying to be tricky with the question. I'm just saying that really none of them are part of you in the sense of you're whole without any pieces or any attachments to things, and yet there are relationships, for instance, for couples that are together forever. When one person is gone, it's feel like a piece of you is gone, and yet you're still an intact whole person. But yet some of these objects can feel that way too. So the way that you want to look at this, I think, is that if you can be realistic and take the emotion out just for a moment and say, look, I don't have room or places for all these things, so I really can't keep them. And so as you look at I'm certain there's a lot of different things. So you can't go through one piece after another piece after another piece without taking months, I'm guessing, to get through everything. And so somehow, if there's a piece of you that wants to keep a few things that seems somewhat reasonable to you, then, at some point, and I don't know when you're ready for this, because there's a grieving period. I don't know how long your dad's gone for, but it sounds like you're still sort of, you're just trying to deal with the estate, and you're trying to, and it's really hard. It's kind of like letting go of your dad, and that's hard. I mean, I don't know that you ever really let go of someone that's a loved one in your life, because they're always sort of present in your mind at least, and in your heart perhaps. But the concept of things, there may be a few things, but I guess you'd have to say to yourself, if I draw a realistic line, how many things am I willing to keep? And of the things that I'm willing to keep, the number of things I'm willing to keep, how do I decide? And you want to create some kind of criteria for yourself. This is something Dad loved. This is something Dad did something with, as opposed to this is something Dad collected 10 years ago and he never looked at again. He didn't give it away. But there might be a few things that jump out at you that feel like this is a part of who that person was, my dad, that remind me of him, and I want to keep those around. I have a few pictures of my own father that just remind me of who he was when he was alive, and they bring a smile to my face when I look at him. I kept his watch for the longest time. Didn't really fit me, but I kept it because it was his. So I kept, but maybe I have like 5 or 10 things of his that just reminded me of him, and I like that feeling of being reminded of him. But I think to the point that you're thinking you got to give it all away or keep it all, I think what you want to find at some point when you're ready, because you might not be ready for a long time, because as I said, there's a grieving process that sometimes you just feel like I can't deal with this yet. But over time, the grief kind of dissipates a bit. And when you feel like you're in a better, more rational state, which 5 pieces, 10 pieces, 20 pieces maybe of my dad am I going to keep around? And let the rest go. Does that make sense?
Full honesty, already been through this thought process, but I do appreciate the attempt.
What are you thinking right now? Where are you on it?
Oh, I tried to hire an estate sale company, but didn't pan through. So now I'm basically in a place where they've left me in proverbial limbo, if you will, because they agreed to do things and just haven't showed. Legally speaking, it's kind of sketchy, but can't really go through those motions. No, do I really want to be honest.
So you're not ready for that part of it yet, but that was the estate people just going to try and sell everything? Is that what the intent was? And if they didn't sell a few things, that would be what would be left for you? Is that sort of how you think?
They told me that I'd be able to put things aside, and they just basically didn't show.
Okay. So you had a plan, but the plan fell through.
Best laid plans.
Yeah. So what are you thinking's next for you?
A lot of stuff, but I can't say any of it necessarily has to do with material things.
So what keeps you from, do you feel like you're going to make some money from this? Is that part of it too? Some of the things he has are worth something? Value-wise?
Yeah. Everything has value, right? Trash, treasure.
I don't know. Some people that hoard things there's not much value in it, honestly. But maybe your dad has a collection of stuff that's pretty valuable. I don't know. So, part of this is, the reason I'm asking that question is because, one thing you can do is just give it away and not get any value from it. But
I've done that already. I've thrown it away, given it away, sold it, done all that.
I'm not sure I understand. So what's left that you haven't done that with then?
A lot.
Okay. So there's just a lot of it. But can you continue to do what you've done then?
Hypothetically?
Yeah.
At cost to me.
Well, there's an emotional cost too, right, Al? If you're thinking about it, there's the reason you called me is because you're feeling something emotional about this stuff, and the longer you keep it around, the more you're going to feel emotionally around it. And so, while you might get some financial benefit if you can sell it, I'm not. You're sort of in a transition point, it sounds to me. You've already thought about this a lot. You've done some things. You put a plan together. The plan fell through, and you gave some of it away. So you're sort of already doing all the things that you can do. The question sounds to me like you went through a process where you put a plan together. You had an estate, some kind of auction house or whatever they are, come in and say they were going to sell this stuff, and they never showed up, or they didn't do what they said they were going to do. And so are you reluctant to try and do that again with another planner, another estate sales organization? You're just feeling like you just don't want to feel the pain that's involved with trying to go through all that again and then maybe have it just be disappointing?
Due to the winter months and the condition of the place, there's not a lot of people that would take on the job, it seems.
Okay. Well, it seems like it seems like you've thought about this a lot, Al, and you got a couple choices in front of you. I think you know them already. It seems like you could just, at financial cost to yourself, give this stuff away and be done with it. Keep the few things that you want to about your dad that you want to keep around, as I was suggesting, and it's over. You don't have to think about it anymore. That's one choice. The second choice is you wait till the spring, you stop thinking about it as much as you can. You kind of, I mean, we all have things that sometimes are cause us to feel like emotional distress, but we find ways within ourselves to compartmentalize that stuff and just kind of put it aside, because you can't really deal with this successfully if you want to get another person in to sell it until the spring, it sounds like. And so you kind of, for the time being, as much as it's possible for you to influence and control your own feelings, you push it aside and you say, look, the decision is, come the end of April, I'm going to start looking to see if I can find somebody who's willing to take this on. And you're done, for the time being anyway. Or, as I said, the other choice is give it away now. Just give it away. Whatever you can't give away and nobody wants, you just dump, and it's over. And you're not thinking about it anymore. Because what you think is financial value to you, and maybe it's great, I have no idea. Maybe it's worth, $100,000. I have no idea what it might be worth. But on the other hand, if it's a couple $1,000s that you think you might make or something, maybe it's not worth the emotional distress, and it's just better to give it away or trash it.
Right. And what about the emotional distress of like the environmental impact of trashing it?
You get over it. Once you make the decision and you do this, you'll grieve. I mean, it's you're giving stuff away and you're throwing stuff away. There isn't a person that goes through their parents' stuff when they're gone that doesn't feel emotional distress about giving stuff away or throwing stuff away. Everybody feels that to different degrees, but everybody feels that. So that's pretty normal stuff. The longer it's around, though, the longer you're struggling with the decision about what to do with it, the more emotional distress you're going to be feeling. Once it's done, you'll feel bad for a little while, and it'll dissipate. For most people, it does. I can't promise you that'll happen, but if in terms of probabilities, there's a 80-90% chance that once you're done with all this, you'll think about it on occasion, but it's not going to haunt you the way it's feeling like right now. So I think you just have to make a decision. And as I said, you can still try to sell it. When you can make the decision that I'm not going to think about this until the springtime when I can do something with it. I might want to think about the things I want to keep, those few things. But beyond that, everything else in the springtime, if I find somebody that can sell it, great. Whatever doesn't get sold gets trashed, thrown away, given away. Or if I can't find anybody to sell it, I give away whatever I can and trash the rest. And I'm done.
Well, thank you for your time, sir. Happy holidays to you.
You too. Thanks for the call. Bye-bye. Well, that's the goal, folks. I don't think that was a home run by any stretch. Just doesn't sound ready to make a decision, but that's where he's at. You got to make a decision in order to let go of the emotional distress, and maybe you want to allow yourself to feel that emotional distress for a while longer while you're struggling with the decision. But hopefully that kind of at least conversation helps Al in some way down the road a piece when he's able to really process the idea that it's time to let go or make a decision to wait till the spring and not think about it and compartmentalize, because that's another thing we can do with things. Sometimes, when something's bothering us, most of us just want to deal with it as soon as we possibly can, and yet that may not be the best strategy. Or it may not be an appropriate strategy, or it may not be a doable strategy, at which point you got to push it aside and you got to learn how to compartmentalize emotional issues. Because frankly, I remember going through my own parents' stuff when they were both gone, and there's nothing easy about it. It's very emotional, especially if you're very close to them. Yet we all move on. It's interesting. Life's journeys are interesting in the challenges that we face as we go through them. All of us know from the day that we're born and the day we understand that at some point we're not going to be here anymore, that it's a journey we're on, and we're all on it. And it all begins with a starting time and an ending time for us. And when it ends, how it ends, the way it ends, what we communicate to the ones we love along the way, Those are all things we can influence. But we really can't influence the fact that once, one, we started, and two, it's going to end. That doesn't really change for any of us. But what does change is how we deal emotionally with those circumstances. So one thing everybody can pay attention to that listen to that call is that we're all going to feel something. If you haven't faced this yet, you're all going to feel something. And when it comes time to letting go of what was our loved ones' possessions, it's going to be hard for us. And the way that we do that is we find something perhaps that we want to keep, that is important to us, that makes us think about that person in a meaningful way, and we hold on to them. And then some things that we might keep, we may never use, we just might sit in a box somewhere. At some point, we either give them away or throw them away. And if we don't do it, our children will later on, or people that are, taking care of what comes next if we don't have children. Whoever's going through our stuff, just either somebody takes stuff or they give it away if they think it's useful for some charitable group or some kind, or it's trashed. That's just the way things go. Okay, you've been listening to the Emotion Roadmap. Take the wheel and control how you feel. This is Chuck Wolfe. And you're listening to WPKN 89.5 FM, Bridgeport, serving Fairfield, New Haven, and Litchfield counties in Connecticut and Suffolk County in New York, as well as communities around the world via podcast and streaming at WPKN.org. Now, if you have something you'd like to call about, or you have a comment about the call you just heard, the number to call is 203-336-9756. 203-336-9756. And I'll give you a moment. Hi, this is Chuck. You're on the air. Who am I talking to, please?
Hi, my name is Josh.
Hi, Josh.
Hi. I just heard that call you had with the other listener.
Uh-huh.
And I was actually, this isn't the normal time I'm off work, but I was actually surprised to even hear this on the radio, and I just wanted to give thanks for your program that you're even talking about this kind of stuff.
Oh, thank you for calling, Josh, and sharing your thoughtful commentary. Yeah, the show's been on the air. Actually, it's 10 years. Not everybody's able to listen at this time of day, but I'm glad you tuned in, and I appreciate the comment. I've been doing this for a long time now, and at some point, people struggle with lots of emotional challenges, and we don't always learn a whole lot about how to deal with our feelings as we're growing up, and certain things like the thing this person we'll call Al was talking about, that only happens once or twice in our lifetime, depending on how many parents we have. So it's not like we have a lot of experience with this kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's a good point. And if I may, I'd like to share my experiences with learning how to live with grief.
Sure.
So a couple of years ago, my oldest brother actually passed away from a motorcycle accident. It was obviously, with that kind of situation, it's a surprise, and there's not really any way to prepare yourself for that. So it's all of the processing has to happen on the back end, which adds extra challenges. However, my wife's grandmother actually just this Thanksgiving passed away. She was 91, and the juxtaposition between those two types of mourning I thought was pretty interesting, and it made me think about how people in general even approach the conversation of death. And I am slightly, disappointed, I would say, that as far as my experiences, death is always kind of one of those things that everybody tiptoes around as far as the topic of discussion, even though it's like one of the two things that all humans will partake in. It's, you know what I mean? It's a unifier.
Right.
So I don't know. As far as what I've learned personally from those experiences, I think if if holding on to material items is your thing, then that's great. But I think for me personally, just understanding living life hand in hand with the idea that there's an expiration date kind of gives perspective to each moment that you do have, and it's one of the only reasons that makes those moments special in my eyes. You know what I mean?
I do, absolutely. Yeah, no, you're making a lot of sense, Josh. Right? One of the things that strikes me about it is on a good day, I'm thinking about the miracle of the fact that any one of us are here and alive and on the planet, and that we have this chance to have this journey and this experience. And then on a not such good day, that I'm scared a little bit about what happens next when we die. Is there the question of afterlife and so forth? And for me, I tend to be a pragmatist, and I just look at, okay, so the choices are I can either believe there's nothing that happens when I die, or there's an afterlife, and if I do good things, maybe the afterlife's a pretty good place. So I figure, well, I can do good things, and if there's no afterlife, no harm done, really. But if there is an afterlife, then great, then I get to enjoy it. My own view is, why not believe in an afterlife? Because it seems like there's no upside to believing in that there isn't one.
Well, that's funny. I mean, if you look at those, I guess either there is an afterlife or there isn't, and even whatever your opinion is on the worst case scenario, if it's not that bad, then you're in a pretty good place, I think. Mm-hmm. I actually don't believe in an afterlife, and I'm not a very religious person. I think that definitely plays a part in it. But it's a lot of people think like, oh, well, then what are you doing this all for? Well, it's like, first of all, I didn't have a choice. I kind of just showed up one day.
Yeah, right.
And second of all, if I got married when I was 20 years old. Okay, so very non-standard type of thing. And my wife and I don't agree on the afterlife question. Okay. But when she asks me, I tell her, I don't think after I die that I'll ever see you again. And that sounds harsh, and that sounds kind of upsetting, but what it makes me think of is how much more significant us being together while we can is.
Well, that's a nice way to think about it. I mean, part of me, if I'm thinking about how I want the other person to feel that I'm talking to, and it's my wife, and I said something like that, I would also say, but in case there is, I'm looking forward to spending the afterlife with you too.
Yeah, you still got to live with her while you are alive. So,
I mean, again, we don't know, and there's too many unanswered questions for me to make any. In other words, you can make a case for there's obviously talking points for each position on this stuff, right? Or whether there is or there isn't. But the talking point for me is that I don't know how things created. I mean, even if there is a God, or even if we look at how our universe, the Big Bang theory or whatever it is, science tells us is like, so okay, that was the Big Bang theory, and that's how the Earth started, and that's how life started on the Earth. But what was before the Big Bang theory? And that nobody can answer that. And what was before? There's just too many questions that we can't answer through science or any other way, not even religious in my mind. So it's like, I don't really know. And so, as I said, I think from a pragmatic point of view, I see no upside in believing there's nothing afterwards, and so I just choose to think that there is.
That's fair. It's a good point too. Like, it's like every time science or religion or whatever claims that they know the answer, it's kind of like really just the goalpost just moved a little bit, and now the answer is just leading to a bigger question.
That's what I feel is like we just keep asking questions and without end. I don't see how it ever ends. But there's something. There's a reason we're here, whatever it might be. I choose to think that one of the things that I enjoy is helping people out if I can, and making a difference in a nice way that make people's lives better. I've had a very nice life in a lot of ways, and I've learned a lot of things that have been helpful to me and to those I love, and so I just want to share those learnings. That's why the show's on.
I mean, what else can you ask for?
Mm-hmm.
That's
well,
pretty nice.
you can ask for a lot, but but those are things that are doable, and at least for me. So, well, anyway, it's really nice to talk to you, Josh. Thanks for the phone call, and thanks for sharing.
I appreciate it.
You bet.
All right, have a good one.
Okay, bye now. Happy holidays. Bye. Okay, that was fun. Again, the number to call if you're thinking of calling in, 203-336-9756. 203-336-9756. I'll give you a minute. Well, this has actually been an interesting show so far. We've talked about hoarding, about grieving, about losing a parent, about afterlife. Well, let's see what the next call has got. Hi, this is Chuck. Can you turn your radio down, please? Hi, thanks. That's great, thanks. This is Chuck. You're on the air. Who am I talking to, please?
John. How you doing?
Good, John. Thanks for calling in.
It's kind of weird that I just tuned into the station, caught the last bit of that conversation. Just a couple hours ago, I was at my doctor's office. I asked the nurse what she does. They're only open twice a week, and she's a clairvoyant, I guess. You know, she could.
That's interesting. Okay, go ahead.
She said she was 8 or 9, and she started seeing, relatives, family, and stuff like that. Then she had, this is where it comes in to what you're discussing. Then she had a car crash, and she died. And she, obviously came back because I saw her today.
Yeah.
But she said it was all. She said there's no English words that could describe the love and the joy and just the super positiveness. I'm making up words because there's no English words she can describe it. And she said it was wonderful.
That's really interesting. So it's like one of those people that she, brainwaves or heart stopped or something they called her dead, and then somehow she managed to be alive again, and she had that experience of seeing something that, or maybe even not seeing, but feeling something that was incredibly positive during that moment, that she was not, at least according to clinical information that we judge people whether they're alive or not. She was not alive and counted as dead, and then she came back to life somehow, and then she had this image that she recounted to you.
Yeah, and she said, because I asked her, I said, did you, see the light at the end of the tunnel? And she said, no, it wasn't quite like that, and she kind of laughed, but she, said it was totally positive and loving, and she didn't want to come back.
Well, I got to tell you, John, that I'm just feeling like this particular show that I'm doing this week feels like it should be on at 2 a.m. in the morning, doesn't it? I mean, it's the kind of conversation we're having.
Yeah, a little deep for 1:45 in the afternoon, huh?
Yeah.
Whatever time it is.
But now that you're saying that, it's kind of interesting. It kind of ties together because, we started off talking about the person who called in, and I called Al, that he was talking about his dad. And then Josh called in and talked about the afterlife a little bit. And now you're talking about somebody who came back from life. And actually, it just reminded me that my father actually had that experience. My dad also was pronounced clinically dead. Now, he's passed away since this, but at one time he was pronounced clinically dead, and yet he came back to life like this person, I guess, in some way. And he didn't have an accent. He just had heart failure, but whatever it was. And he described something where somehow he saw his relatives, and it was all green. He didn't see a light at the end of the tunnel, but it was like he saw people from his past, his mom, I think he said. But it was a very warm, meaningful, fulfilling experience. And then later on, years later, when I asked him about it, he didn't really remember it. It was really curious because it stood out for me at the time that he had it and the experience. But, we don't know. We don't know. I mean, people will say that chemical reactions in your body cause those things. I mean, there might be a scientific explanation that would explain why this woman felt that way or why my dad did. But there's a number of people who say these things, and we just don't know. That's how I feel about
You don't. But what I took away from the whole thing was that it was good. So, not to be afraid of, because we're all going there. and that was a little shot in the arm. Okay, don't be so afraid of gently going into that good night one of these days. Hopefully not anytime soon.
Right.
But she seems sincere. So, all right, that's my 2 cents. I thought I'd call in.
Thanks, John. Appreciate the call.
All right,
You have a
take
good
care.
holiday. Bye-bye.
You too. Bye-bye.
Okay, like I said, it feels like this show ought to be on like at the middle of the of the nighttime, right? No, anybody else got anything like that they want to call about? The number is 203-336-9756. Again, the show is the Emotion Roadmap. Take the wheel and control how you feel. And I guess we've been talking about how you want to feel about, the afterlife. Wasn't the topic I had in mind when I came on this today. Let me ask you about a different topic, actually. One of the things that I have an agent that works with me as a professional speaker, and she was saying, she'd kind of like to get me on the air to talk about, on like one of the cable news shows or something, to talk about how do we talk to each other when we almost violently disagree with each other about things like politics. She said, this really hasn't died down. This polarization, hyper partisanship, really, that's been going on for so long. People have a hard time talking to each other, and in some cases, have just stopped talking, particularly about politics. But we have the holiday seasons coming up, and she was just saying, maybe it'd be great if you could go on the air and talk about how you can use this emotion roadmap to think about how we want people to feel when we know that we have very strong disagreements about politics. And we know we all do. I mean, right? I mean, I know people that no matter what President Trump might do, that might be a good thing. Like, for instance, here's something that I think is very bipartisan, and I doubt that if you don't like Donald Trump, you give him credit for it, but it looks like there's going to be criminal justice reform that might get passed this year. And it looks like it's going to be passed with a lot of Democrats as well as a lot of Republicans, and President Trump wants to sign it. So that sounds like a good thing to me. But I know there are people in my circle of friends that nothing this president does can be good. So how do we talk to each other about things like that? I mean, how do we get past, this polarization? I remember reading once in the Wall Street Journal, I don't remember the name of the study, but they were reporting on a study that showed that when people were monitoring people's brains through brain scanning technology, that certain subjects, and one typical one would be like abortion. When abortion gets talked about, in many people's brains, there's a certain part of the brain that processes information that seems to freeze. There's no room for conversation because people have made decisions that are hardwired, it seems like, and can't be changed. And so they can't entertain anything, and the brain seems to shut down in certain ways. It seems like politics have gotten like that, hasn't it? So how do we talk to each other about that? So I'm curious. I just have a couple of minutes. If anybody has a few thoughts about that, you got a couple of minutes before I go. I'll give you a moment to call. 203-336-9756. 203-336-9756. Well, I imagine everybody that hates Donald Trump just probably stopped listening. Anyway, so I am thinking about that in case I do get the opportunity to go on television to talk about this. And it seems to me it's the same thing that I talk about all the time on this show, which is how do we want others to feel? How are we feeling? What would be ideal to feel? Because many of you, this is my last show in December, so I won't be on the air. And a lot of you over the holidays will be entertaining guests, and sometimes people you love that you disagree with. So be thoughtful about how you want them to feel. I do have a caller. Hi, this is Chuck. You're on the air. Who am I talking? Oh, could you turn your radio down, please?
Not on.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
Who am I talking to?
Talking to Mike.
Mike.
I'm on the highway, so I can't talk very long. I have an answer to his question.
Go ahead.
Question about how we talk to one another.
Yeah.
We do it with facts. We talk facts. We gather facts, and we put them into our presentation. We don't depend on hyperbole. We don't depend on emotion. We don't depend on anything but facts, not opinions. That's how we talk to each other about everything. Thank you for hearing me out. I'll listen to what you have to say on the radio.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks for the call. Have a nice holiday. Bye-bye. Yeah, facts are really helpful. Sometimes we can agree on the facts, not always. But even sometimes with facts, it doesn't necessarily make the other person feel okay about it. But I think Mike's right. You lead with facts and not opinions. Or if you are expressing an opinion, which often accompanies the facts, you explain it with facts to the best of you. And again, sometimes, it's statistics can lie sometimes, so you have to be careful about even facts. But anyway, thanks for the call, Mike. Thanks everybody for calling in. I really appreciate it. Al, Josh, Mike, thanks for the calls, everybody. Have a great couple of weeks. I'll be back in January. Take care, everybody. It's been fun.
Funding for Simsbury Community Television is provided in part by contributions from viewers like you. Thank you.